Welcome to Empowering the Next Generation podcast. I am Helen Veru. This podcast is dedicated to help anyone connected to preteens and teens to give them tools, empower and inspire teachers, high school senior leaders, and parents to build the future leaders of tomorrow. We discuss about controversial and relevant topics related to the world of education, the main problems you are facing, and solutions to help you navigate your journey. We want to make a positive change in education by bringing on experts that will give you a different perspective on how you can solve the hardship you are facing today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Empowering the Next Generation podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you're watching what we're doing because we want to ignite high school communities. Also, we want to develop leaders and create meaningful connections. If you want to exit the classroom and if you feel overwhelmed, this is the right place for you to learn with different experts that can help you to change your mindset into how you can actually start your consultancy as an educational consultant. So make sure you can join my free masterclass from educator to CEO so you could actually grow into understanding the keys that can help you to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So thank you so much for joining. And today we have an amazing speaker. You always see that I bring people who have expertise, and we don't have only an educational consultant. We have a doctor. Dr. Darrin Peppard is a nationally recognized leadership expert, a keynote speaker, an author. He's also a former high school principal and superintendent, and he also brings nearly 3 decades of experience in education to his work as a leadership coach and consultant. He's also the author of Road to Awesome and Culture First Classrooms and the host of Lean Into Leadership podcast. So through his coaching, his speaking, his professional learning, Darrin really helps leaders like you to embrace clarity, lead with purpose, and create thriving school cultures. So thank you for joining us, Darrin, in the podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. I appreciate it.
Yes, I actually met you. I'm not sure it's online. I posted something and you reached out to me. I was so impressed by the work that you do because you're not only a coach, you are an author. And I want you to really share with the audience, okay? You often talk about school leaders being stuck in a cycle of chaos. So what does that look like day to day, and how do leaders know when they are caught in it?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and I appreciate that. The cycle of chaos goes back to when I transitioned from an assistant principal to a principal at the high school level. I was in a role where, in many ways, I was the instructional leader already on my campus. And when I was hired to be the principal, my superintendent told me, Darrin, I really need you to be the instructional leader of the campus. And that was mostly because my predecessor was not. He was kind of that old school manager. He delegated everything away, and I already was the instructional leader. And honestly, Helen, it kind of threw me for a loop. And here's why I say that. To me, that meant keep doing everything you're already doing, plus now go be the principal. And very quickly, I fell into what I call superhero syndrome, where I thought I had to be everything to everybody, answer every question, be the smartest person in the room, solve every problem. And after a couple of years doing this, I'd gained a ton of weight. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was starting to burn out. I was really ineffective, honestly, as a principal those first couple of years. And fortunately, my third year, my superintendent retired. He was wonderful, but he retired, and the new superintendent believed in leadership coaches, and he hired coaches for every one of us.
Amazing.
And while many of my colleagues were offended that he would do that, I was grateful because I knew I was struggling. And ultimately, working with my coach, he helped me move away from being that constant firefighter to being somebody who was truly leading their building. So over the years since that time, both as a principal, as a superintendent, and now the last 5 years working as a speaker and as a coach, authoring a couple of books, those types of things. I've reflected on that. And that's where I've coined this cycle of chaos. And really, the cycle of chaos is it's five things that ultimately lead to administrators, leaders feeling like they're just they're not leading their building is leading them. So very
Mhm.
quickly, if I can, it essentially is this. So that C in chaos is constant reactivity. Instead of being a proactive leader, showing up and working to your priorities, you become the one who's victim to the time bandits, those people who steal your time for this, that, and the other thing, and
Mm.
you take on their
Taking
chaos.
leads. I like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah. So that's that constant reactivity. And constant reactivity then leads to this high cognitive overload where our brains are just running a million miles an hour all the time. And I liken it to those moments when, as a leader, and I was guilty of this too, we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and think, oh, I forgot to respond to that email, or oh, I didn't call the
Mm.
assistant superintendent back, or
Wow.
man, there's this decision I know I need to make. I just need to have it, or I have a difficult conversation I know I need to have, and I just keep putting it off. And your brain just won't shut down
Mm.
because it's just completely overloaded. When we're in high cognitive overload, that leads us to an absence of clarity. When our
Wow.
brains are going like that, we're not clear. We're not focused on what truly matters. We're not working on our priorities. We
Mm.
are we're just we're just getting by. We're just absolutely no longer holding anybody to expectations. We're just trying to get through the day. Absence of clarity then leads to overextension. So we're grasping at straws. We're trying to do way too much work. We're doing work that belongs to others, but we don't want to let go of it. We feel like
Mm.
we have to be in control, and that ultimately leads to survival mode leadership. You know,
Wow.
the phrase that sometimes I know I said, and I hear from leaders sometimes, if I can just get to spring break, then I can catch up.
Mm.
If I can just get to
Yeah.
the holiday break, then I can catch up. If I can just get to the weekend, maybe I can catch my breath. And that cycle just continues to feed itself. We get to that survival mode leadership, and that leads to, of course, even more constant reactivity and so forth. And it just that's why to me it's a cycle. It's not a chain. It's not a
Mm.
linear progression. It's something that just continues to spin. And man, I see it in so many leaders. And I think it's the big reason that I do what I do. I believe very strongly that each of us is uniquely positioned to help the person we used to be. I was the person who was in that very spot. So most of my
Mm.
work now, my writing, my speaking, all of that, the podcast is dedicated to how can I help leaders break that cycle of chaos? And
Mm.
of course, the answer is clarity and intentionality.
Yes, I love that. I don't know if you heard about John Maxwell. I am a GMT member, John Maxwell certified coach as well. And I love how he talked about leadership, the different laws of leadership, the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And he also talks about empowering others. And I feel this is what is missing in schools, community. We don't empower all the stakeholders. People just come in education. They have degrees, but and they perform, but they've never been trained to grow into leadership, to understand what is leadership. And I feel when you talk about leadership, for me, it speaks to my heart. Not just leadership, it's transformational leadership. It's not just I have the position, I am a leader in the school, but what is that mindset of leadership? And I love how we have leaders in schools that really are in that chaotic aspects, and you are breaking it clearly. I love when you talk about constant reactivity about that. And as well, when you talk about, I just took some notes about high cognitive overloads. This is true because even educators have the same kind of cycle in their life. So once they realize that they are in that cycle, okay, where should they start? What are the few practical steps they can take to break out chaos and move towards clarity? Just a few
Yeah.
steps.
Absolutely. I think really what it comes down to is we have to be willing to take a step back, take a breath, and then step up to what I call balcony level leadership. And there's a quick story behind that. I was I was a basketball coach, and as a
Mm,
basketball coach, I videoed everything, not just games. I mean, it was everything, practices and the whole bit. And that video was always shot from up on the balcony level. As a leader, I always felt like I needed that too. I needed to be, in a position where we can go jump up on the balcony and take a little bit better look at
mm,
you know, what is it that I'm really focused on? And am I really doing the right work? What I push leaders to think about when they find their balcony, their place to go check in on what matters to them, I think there's three key areas. And if leaders can identify these three key areas, then it gives them something to continue to go back to. The first is, what is your mission, vision, and your values?
period.
What do you care about, right? You know, it's this is one of the questions that my coach asked me one of the very first times he was with me. He just said, Darrin, what do you even care about? Like, what's important to you? Where do you see your school going? Like, what's
Yeah,
possible here?
that's
That's
it.
mission, vision, and values. And when leaders are clear on that, then that allows them to simply start to break that cycle because again, the middle of that cycle is that absence of clarity. If we're not
Mm,
clear on where we're trying to go and what we care about, and in my first book, I wrote about the six things that to me were my biggest values. And once I was able to get clear on those, I was regularly checking in on those six things. So I think that's one is definitely understanding and knowing what is your mission, what is your vision, your values. The second
mm,
thing, get really clear on what it is you expect and how you're going to communicate that. And by
mm,
expectations, what I mean by that is not just what do you expect of others, but what do you expect of yourself? You
mhm,
know, so often I see leaders who get frustrated over somebody falling short of, whatever level of expectation they think they might have. And I'll ask, do your people know what it is that you expect? And I'll hear things like, well, yeah, I told them on the first day of school. Okay,
mm.
that's not enough.
Yes.
You have to live those expectations out loud. You have to be willing to hold people to whatever standard you think you want
Mm,
to hold. And there are a lot of different ways to do that. And it's not necessarily about punishment to gain compliance. It's about when you see the things you want to see, reinforce it, call it out, say, hey,
mm,
thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing the things that we hold true here at our school. The other thing too is to think about, from an accountability measure, what type of accountability do I want to have on my campus? Am I somebody who wants to have high levels of accountability where everybody feels like, hey, I'm not going to
mm,
let others down? Or are you more of a passive leader that you just kind of hope things will go the way you want? I mean, that's the difference, honestly, between weak and strong accountability cultures. In weak accountability cultures, leaders will lower the expectation to meet the performance. But in high
mm,
accountability types of situations, the leaders will raise the performance to meet the standard. So when you're
mm,
clear about what you expect, and again, this is about you as much as it is about everybody around you,
mm,
then you're able to communicate it really well. And you communicate it through your actions as well as your words. So that I think is really important. Then the third thing is just get clear about your priorities.
mm,
So often, and man, I see this with so many leaders. We get stuck in constant reactivity, and the reason is we're not clear about what's important to us. We're not clear what our priorities are, and then even if we are, we haven't
mm.
done anything to make them a true priority. Stephen Covey once said, and I think
Yes,
this was
I love
in.
Stephen Covey.
Oh, absolutely, right. And I think this
Amazing.
was in the Seven Habits book,
Just,
but he said the difference is don't prioritize your schedule your priorities.
Nice.
And that was something for me that I made this big change to as a school leader was I started back to, the things that I felt were more important, my values, my priorities. I started putting those on the calendar and made those
Mm,
non-negotiable.
nice.
So often, and obviously we're talking about education, so often educational leaders will tell me that they spend most of their time with email, student discipline, staff discipline, budgetary things, operational management. But where they want to spend their time is in the classroom, coaching
Mm,
teachers, being with students, those kinds of things. Well, if it's important to you, put it on your calendar. Block
yeah,
20 minutes 3 times a
that's
week to
it.
go be in
That's
classrooms. And then
simple.
treat it like a meeting with your superintendent. You wouldn't skip
Definitely.
that. So
Yeah.
don't skip the classroom time. Go
Yes.
do what matters. So find your priorities, schedule your priorities, and stick to your priorities. To me, if you can do those things, chaos is still going to come at us, Helen. That's
Yes.
just going to happen.
Yes.
But 90% of the stuff that leaders allow to pull them into the cycle of chaos, stuff that isn't really that, if you go to the Eisenhower matrix, it's not urgent and important.
Yes.
Typically, it's urgent, but it's probably not important. And when
Mm,
other people bring stuff to you, it may be urgent, but it doesn't mean it's important. Might be important to
totally.
you, to them, but it doesn't mean it's important to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's all the things that you said resonated with me. And I feel that this is what is lacking in school, that this because you live in the States. I don't know how it is like in terms of as you say, accountability and education in the States, but in most of the other countries, they don't value really I would say effective CPDs. And I feel like when Don Maxwell talk about leadership is nothing less, nothing more. It's just influence. It's who you are first with yourself. And so many people don't know themselves. They don't know their boundaries. They don't know their identity because even are they aligned being educated as well? Um, what the word again? Are they aligned to be school leaders as well? Sometimes they end up being in a job, but it doesn't mean that they were called for that. And I feel it's all this
Right.
stuff that people need to start thinking about. Are you really fulfilled in what you're doing? Are you aligned? Because all of that speaks with mission. I love that mission, that value, that vision. It's important that people pause and really think about those stuff. Not only school leaders, but educators, parents. When you know your priorities, as you're saying, you will say no to so many things. And I
Yeah.
feel it's so needed that people needs to and be more conscious of it in their life. So let's dive deeper to the classroom. So many leaders say that they want to be in classrooms, as you were saying, but they struggle to make it happen. So what gets in the way most often, and what does effective classroom presence really look like for you? Just talk in a few minutes. What does it look like, effective
Yeah.
classroom presence?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, effective classroom presence should be one aligned to what is, your current vision of your school. Are your teachers
Mm,
meeting that level of expectation, and how could you help them if they're not? And if they are meeting that, how do you celebrate that? How do you reinforce
that's
that? And how do you actually take advantage of that and allow them to be the exemplars for other educators in the building? I think that to me is really important. A second thing I would say is very effective and very important in being in the classroom is not to go in a judgmental mindset. Often as
mm,
leaders, I'll tell you a very, very quick story. Often as leaders, we think we have to go in and we have to be able to tell them something they can do to get better. Recently, one of the schools I support right here in the town where I live, I was in with the principal and one of his new assistant principals. And this assistant principal taught special education in kind of a self-contained environment. And we're in an AP calculus class. And he turned to me and
mm,
said, How do I give feedback to an AP Calc teacher? I taught self-contained special education. How do I do that? And I said, you don't have to. What if you were just curious about what's happening in the classroom? What if you just find one thing that you can ask a good question about? That may spark then a conversation. I had a phenomenal calculus teacher in my building as a building principal, and she wanted tons of feedback all the time. I didn't teach calculus. I was a science teacher. Instead of focusing on content, I focused on other areas that could launch us into a conversation. Like one time I was in her room and she had changed her seating arrangement. Now her kids were sitting three wide and they had dry erase markers and they're writing on the desk. And afterwards, I just asked, tell me why the new seating arrangement. Helen, it launched into a 45-minute conversation about pedagogy just because I was
Mm,
curious.
mm.
Most teachers are really smart individuals and they're very good at their craft. They don't need you to tell
Yes,
them what to do differently. Yes,
totally.
you'll have early career teachers, you'll have teachers who are struggling. It's easy to pick out the things, ooh, we got to get better at this, classroom
Yes.
management or
Mm,
questioning or whatever. But your great teachers, if you want to drive the culture in your building, coach your great teachers and coach them simply by being curious. Tell
nice.
me more about this. And whew, off they will go. And they will feel so supported by you, not because you're judging them, but because you're just helping them continue to grow and get better. I think that's really what effective classroom coaching as an instructional leader looks like.
I agree. I totally agree. We should bring coaching into school more and develop leaders around us. And it speaks to really the quality of community you want to raise. And when you coach someone, when you coach a teacher, they will coach their students. It's such a culture where, as you were saying, you're curious, you want to know more about them, and you're helping them to develop their skill, the coaching skills that many, I feel it's only a school leader who is willing to grow, his community will be willing to grow as well as much as he's growing. So I think it all depends on the school leader. I guess you were a great school leader because you understood the power of growth, of leadership, of transformational, um, instructional leadership. And it's very few people who understand that. So I commend you for that. So
Well,
two
but
inspiration.
let me talk on that for just a very quick
Yeah,
second.
yes.
Back to something that you had said a little bit earlier. Actually, two very quick things that you said earlier. One, you talked about Maxwell and the irrefutable laws.
Mm,
Law number one is the law of the lid. If we aren't willing to raise our own lid, we're never going to increase performance, right?
that's true.
So, which takes me to my second point. You said, something, about me being a great school leader. I was a work in progress all the way through, but I understood at a point that for my school to get better, I had to get better. I had to continue
Simple,
to learn.
simple.
And in the 5 years since I left my superintendency and have been doing this work, I've learned even more about leadership
Mm,
than I did even in the role. I learned a lot in the role, but now because I get to work with so many schools and so many
mm,
leaders in so many different places, I see lots of different challenges and unique perspectives that aren't just based on my experience. Now it's based on hundreds and hundreds of other leaders' experience.
yes, but it takes, I feel, someone who is willing to learn, and not
Mhm.
everybody is willing to learn. I feel like
Absolutely
you
true.
have the mindset, a growth mindset. You don't realize, I feel like even when you are in that position and where you are right now, you don't see yourself just as having a position. This is not what you think. You think about really how you can make an impact, how you can make a difference in people's lives. So I feel this is the switch that most leaders don't have. They don't have that mindset where they want to empower, they want to make their teams better. They want just the job to be done. They focus on performance rather than transformation. So I feel this is what is needed. So Last question. So, two inspirational advice taken from your book, Road to Awesome and Culture First Classroom, to any educators or school leaders who want to create an awesome culture in their community. Give two advice from your book.
I think I love that question. I'm going to go to, I'll go to Road to Awesome first. And I've kind of talked about this a little bit, but maybe I'll go a little bit deeper here.
Mm,
I think, and this builds right off of what you just said, Helen. I think as a leader, we have to know ourselves extremely well. And a big part of that is know what it is that's truly important to you as a leader. And when I
mm,
ask this question of leaders, I get all kinds of different answers. So I've started to just give my example so they get an idea of what I'm saying. So nobody should necessarily say, oh, well, the six that Darrin focused on is what I want to focus on, but I use them as an example so others can get an idea.
mm,
In my six, very quickly, build positive culture and climate. Two, ensure that everyone feels seen, heard, valued, and trusted. Three, empower and embrace student voice. Four, lead with a coaching mindset. Five, be the
mm.
instructional leader of the campus. And six, be the champion of the organization. To me, that's what I valued as a school leader. So again, what my six are, not important. I gave you those as an example. As a leader, take a step back and think about what do I really care about? And then to what I said earlier, get on the balcony periodically and check in. What evidence do I have to for myself that I'm really
Mm,
focused on those priorities? So that would be one. Out of culture first classrooms, and there's so many good pieces in here.
mm,
But I would tell you that I'll give you a piece of advice out of there from my co-author, from Katie Kinder, who I think the absolute world of. She talks very early in our book, in I think chapter two. She tells a story she calls the Tale of Two, and it was her visiting two different superintendents. One of which was just you've got 5 minutes. That's all that's all I have time for. I've got all these other things, and this person came across as very self-important. The other superintendent, when she went to her meeting, the secretary said, well, I'm going to walk you down to where he is. He's actually covering a kindergarten class today. He's going to, he's in there covering for 20 minutes because we couldn't get anybody else. He was willing to go and do the work that others maybe wouldn't do in that role. So I'll say this connected to that as a leader, don't lose touch with, don't get disconnected from the work that's happening day to day. Culture is built on what we do, how we show up, and the mindset that we bring every day to the work that we do. And if your mindset is, I'm too busy for going and spending time in kindergarten, um, you need to think about how you're leading your organization. And I'm not saying you need to go and substitute teach in kindergarten to be a great leader, but that's just a great example of not losing touch with the work that really matters and being able to be connected with the people doing the work closest to the kids. Because again, that's why you do what you do. So don't lose sight of that.
I love it. I love it. I feel like anyone listening to Dr. Darrin Peppard, this is a way to really understand where you are in your journey of growth and leadership. And if they feel stuck, they can actually get your book. I will put all the details in the comment section and they can actually link up with you. Anyone listening to us, don't forget if you want to exit the classroom and you feel overwhelmed, make sure you join my free masterclass from Educator to CEO. And we are here to help you to ignite, develop leaders, and create meaningful connections in school communities. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Dr. Darrin, for being with us. It was such a pleasure for you to share your expertise with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you for listening to this episode, and make sure you connect with us on Instagram at The Case for Success. Check also my Linktree and become an affiliate of the Success Guide for Teens Academy, a program that will empower your school community as a parent, teacher, and high school senior leader. Do not hesitate to reach out, comment, and share. Until then, see you in the next episodes.